Hello and welcome back to the Motorsport Baithak podcast. I'm your host DD and joining me once again today is my friend and your co-host Vedant. On this episode, we'll be talking about the F1 Iberian GP weekend. So, let's grab some chai, take our seats, ready your opinions and dive right into the conversation. Hello Vedant. Today we'll be reviewing two weekends together. It's going to be a challenge. So, are you ready for it?
I am ready for it. There were two good races for Formula One. Surprisingly good, especially
Not everyone would agree with that, but I will.
yeah. I mean, surprisingly good, especially the Spain race. But yeah, let's get into it.
Absolutely. So let's not do it race wise because it'll become way too long. Let's just talk about the drivers and the teams, and that way we'll cover both the weekends together. So let's just start with Lewis Hamilton taking his 100th pole, missing out in Portimao, but taking his 100th pole in Barcelona. Finally, another record that Hamilton just chews down, and just another statistic that will live on forever in the Formula One history books.
Yeah, I mean, it is just unbelievable. Love him, hate him, have whatever, like, people can have whatever opinion they want. But 100 pole positions is something like no one could have dreamt of it if they even tried. I don't even know where he passed Schumacher. I guess it was around 60 or something. And if he goes on for if he stays for the next season as well, he'll most likely double that record. So absolutely phenomenal.
Phenomenal. Exactly. And I think Autosport did a little feature on all the polls and all the memorable polls of Lewis Hamilton on Instagram, and I think that was a nice little tribute. But I think it's just surprising for me to see not as much hype about Lewis Hamilton as there was about Michael Schumacher back in the day. And I think people don't realize what Lewis Hamilton is doing. He's not just rewriting the history books. He's more than likely rewriting them forever, because with the new rules and regulations come in, I don't see this happening. I don't see such a dominance across a span of 6-7 years from a team and driver pairing for the next 10 years at least.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Michael Schumacher did say that he won't be surprised if anyone overtook his record. But as we stand now, we now know that these sort of eras do get very tiring for fans and for other competitors as well. And going forward in the future, Formula One and the FIA will try to minimize these eras as such. So it will be very, very difficult to get to that point where you are winning championships every season for 6 seasons and getting to 100 wins and 100 poles. I mean, Hamilton just...
I mean, hopefully, but that is nothing to take away from what Lewis Hamilton has established. I mean, and I think people need to appreciate more of what he has done and accomplished over the last 7 years, especially.
Yeah, he just won his 98th race in Spain.
And he's just two away, and it's going to happen sometime in the next few races when he's going to be a 100-time race winner too.
Yeah, and it would be magical, if Valtteri Bottas and Max Verstappen fight back, get a couple wins in between, and Hamilton wins that 100th race at Silverstone on the Lewis Hamilton straight. That would be magical.
Yeah, absolutely. That is something I had not thought about, and now that you say, as much as I want this championship to go down to the wire, I would not mind watching Lewis Hamilton win his 100th Grand Prix in Silverstone at all, and I think the fans will enjoy it a lot too. But this season, you can't talk about Lewis Hamilton without talking about Max Verstappen. Definitely the championship fight, the points gap has increased to 14 points after these two rounds, and Lewis Hamilton leads. I don't exactly remember the points anymore, but he does lead by 14 points, most importantly. But again, two very impressive races from Lewis Hamilton and a very impressive race from the Mercedes team altogether in Barcelona, especially Lewis's side of the garage.
Yes, definitely. That two-stopper strategy, I mean, no one saw it coming really, because, see, it was a game of strategy at that point, but the way the way they pitted for the first lap, well after Verstappen pitted for the first time, no one saw that second stop coming, and they certainly caught the Red Bull by surprise.
Absolutely, and it caught me by surprise too while I was watching the race unfold. First of all, it was just weird to see Red Bull falter. I know, after the race, Max and I think Christian Horner came out and said, there was some miscommunication between GP, Max's race engineer, and Max himself during the race, which is why Max pitted on the wrong lap, per se, right?
Yeah.
And from what it seemed, Max was supposed to be on a one-stop strategy, and he would have pitted probably, between 26 or between lap number 26 or 30, but he pitted on at the end of lap 22, I think. And it was a 4-second stop, a 4.2-second stop, compared to a Red Bull 2-second stop, what we usually see. And I thought, Mercedes should jump up on that opportunity and, stop the very next lap, stop Lewis Hamilton the very next lap and take the race lead, because I think even like a whole lap in, Lewis could have still pitted and taken the race lead after Max pitted. So it was really surprising to see Lewis and Mercedes not do that and go on to the 28th lap and then, basically concede a chance to have track position and seal the race on a one-stop or a two-stop strategy, depending on however the race unfolded. And again, pitting on lap 28, we thought, Lewis would come back, give Max a fight, and that is exactly what happened up until lap 36, I believe. When did Lewis pit? It was like lap 40. I think Lewis pitted on lap 42.
Yeah, lap 42.
So between lap 36 and lap 42, we saw Lewis between like a second and a half of Max and giving him a run for the money. But definitely that pit stop on lap 42 was unexpected by all means. And I was really surprised that Red Bull did not respond. I know, a lot of people at that time said, this is hindsight and would say this is hindsight. But even at that time, Max would be on 20 lap old tires compared to Lewis after, Lewis would put on a fresh set of mediums. And I don't know whether it was a miscommunication or even like Red Bull was taken by so much surprise that they could not respond within the next couple of laps. But had Max been put on softs after that, for the second pit stop right after Lewis pitted, I think we would have a much more interesting race than we had this past weekend in Barcelona.
Yeah, definitely. If Max Verstappen and Red Bull had responded to that Mercedes second stop, there would have been a fighting chance. Now, the Mercedes was faster throughout the session, regardless of throughout the weekend, regardless of the pit strategy, but it would have been a fighting chance. I mean, it would not have been, the gap would not have been 30 seconds at the end of the race. And I think Graham Rahal, the IndyCar driver, tweeted that today was an example of an engineer not fully taking in what his driver was relaying back, and that is something Max Verstappen was constantly telling his race engineer, that the tires are struggling and he is having difficulty driving the car. But yeah, certainly a very strange decision from Red Bull to not go for the second stop.
But I think it also, shows us the psyche behind the two teams. Red Bull was definitely on the back foot. Red Bull was like, all right, we have the race lead and this is our race to lose. But really, it was Lewis Hamilton's race to lose, because we all know Lewis qualified on pole. He got beaten into the first corner by Max Verstappen. Brilliant move from Max. But even then, it was really Lewis's race to lose, because they had been faster throughout the whole weekend. And then, even though Mercedes was technically on the back foot after the first round of pit stops, they were behind Max Verstappen. And at that point of time, with just 5-lap fresher tires on Lewis's car, Lewis was still struggling to, overtake Max Verstappen. And after trying for 3 and 4 laps, he backed out and he pitted. But that goes to show that instead of just defending and letting Lewis battle down track, the Mercedes team, especially the race strategist, took the fight to Red Bull through that second pit stop that they made. And it shows the difference in mindset that Lewis and Mercedes have towards winning the World Championship, that they are not afraid to gamble, they're not afraid to go aggressive, they're not afraid to be on the offensive, to take those World Championship points away from Red Bull and put them under pressure. And that just goes to show, but like Red Bull is a 4-time, World Championship winning team, so there's nothing to take away from them. But that goes to show the level at which Mercedes have been operating over the last 6-7 years.
Yeah, and I mean, it's quite ironic, Last season, I remember Red Bull, like Max Verstappen and Christian Horner and all these guys, always talk that strategy is the only way they can beat Mercedes. And in Barcelona, ironically, strategy was the way Mercedes beat Red Bull. So yeah, very very funny in my opinion.
Absolutely, and I mean, back in 2017 and 2018, when Sebastian Vettel drive for Ferrari was the primary contender to Lewis Hamilton's World Championship defense, and we all said that Ferrari would screw up Sebastian Vettel's strategy. It almost seems that Red Bull is starting to do the same with Max Verstappen's strategy and him being the only World Championship title contender this year against Lewis Hamilton's title defense. But another thing, so the F1's Monday morning debrief article said that no matter what happened, Lewis would have likely come out on top, even if Red Bull would have pitted for a fresh set of softs. But I'm still of the opinion that had Red Bull pitted for a fresh set of soft tires right after the lap that Lewis pitted, he would have 24 laps on the soft, and we saw that the soft tires hold up for 24 laps because that is what most cars did on their first stint, and the pace differential or the overlap point is right around 24 laps for the soft tire compared to the medium tire. So I think we would have gotten a much closer race, like I said before, compared to Max Verstappen not pitting at all during the race.
Yeah, it was as we.
And I'm of the opinion that Max would have even overtaken Lewis, or would have had a better chance to overtake Lewis on those softs compared to Lewis's mediums.
I mean, certainly the fight would have gone down to the last 2 or 3 laps, definitely. But
Absolutely. Now, talking about race strategy, let's talk about Charles Leclerc and Valtteri Bottas. It was kind of disappointing from Ferrari, in my opinion, because I was of the opinion that Charles held up Valtteri Bottas for 23 laps of the race. He overtook Bottas on the first lap. Kind of weird from Bottas to hug the apex so hard on the very first lap and giving Charles a very wide berth to overtake him around turn 3. So very uncharacteristic of Valtteri. I don't know if there was more grip or if he was struggling with grip and wanted to take it to low speed corner. But very uncharacteristic from Valtteri that not taking the racing line and giving Charles all the room he needed to overtake. But then again, I feel Ferrari should have responded to Valtteri Bottas pitting on the 23rd or 22nd lap whenever he did, and putting Charles in a commanding position to fight for that P3, because we did see how much Valtteri struggled on those soft tires to overtake Charles Leclerc during his first stint on the softs. And I think even though Charles was about a half a second slower on the mediums, he could have held back Valtteri Bottas throughout the race had he come out of the pits in front of him. Or even, Ferrari could have tried and undercut Valtteri Bottas for the P3 place since they were already there. Instead of putting Charles Leclerc on a one-stop strategy for the entire race.
Yeah, definitely. Charles Leclerc drove brilliantly, and he would have fought for P3 had it been a better strategy. And speaking of Ferrari strategies, in Portimao, in Portimao, Carlos Sainz started at P5. He made up a place on the first lap. He overtook Sergio Perez. And then he was the first person to pit. He pitted. Lando Norris covered him. But Carlos Sainz lost it. I mean, that strategy call was pretty strange. Although Norris held on to his tires and finished the race in P5, brilliant drive from him. But we know that Sainz is new to the car, is still learning. And to put him on those medium tires for 40 odd
one-stop race.
Yeah, for 40 odd laps was a disaster, and he fell down quite quickly at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think although Ferrari did miss out on points and Carlos did miss out on points because of a race strategy problem again in Portimao, and we have seen Ferrari make those mistakes over and over again. Ferrari did make a good strategy call with Carlos Sainz in Barcelona that allowed Carlos Sainz to jump Esteban Ocon once he was out of the pits after the first round of pit stops. So that did work in favor of Carlos Sainz, and he did drive a really good race in Barcelona once again, finishing in the points, and he's always finished in the points in Barcelona, so keeping his streak going. Now, I know we have already talked about Mercedes and Red Bull for over 10 minutes in this podcast, but I want to take the conversation back to them a little bit. Now, we know that the Red Bull is having issues with the tires. They don't keep the tires as well as the Mercedes do, which also brings us to the fact that why did Red Bull choose to continue on a one-stop strategy? Why did they try to fight on a one-stop strategy, knowing that their car does worse on tire wear than the Mercedes, and also knowing the fact that Mercedes is a faster car, around Barcelona. So a lot of mistakes I feel in the Red Bull garage that weekend. And then talking about Sergio Perez, again, his strategy was also all over the place. It seemed that he was also on a one-stop strategy, which did not work out for him either, and he was not able to overtake anyone in front of him later during the race.
Yeah, definitely a very disappointing weekend, a very disappointing double header for Red Bull. But next up, we have Monaco. We know the Red Bull is good around the streets of Monaco, and hopefully they continue that trend, and hopefully they can fight back, because if they lose Monaco and if they lose out on the next couple of races, the championship is gone.
Absolutely. And I think the tire wear issue is something that they need to look into, because we've seen that the Red Bull does eat up its tires pretty quickly. But anyway, let's move on. So we also talked about Ferrari again. Ferrari, same thing. They eat up their tires a little quicker than the rest of the cars compared to the McLarens of Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo. So I think that is something that Ferrari also needs to look into, because both in Portimao and Barcelona, they did not look as fast on the mediums on race pace as they did on the softs. But yeah, let's talk about Lando Norris. A mixed doubleheader for him. Did really well in Portimao, as you said. Held on a one-stop strategy to finish P5 behind Sergio Perez. But a P9 finish, was it yesterday?
Yeah. No, a
What happened
P8,
there?
I guess.
Yeah, but what happened there for Lando Norris? Obviously had a bad qualifying with Nikita Mazepin blocking him, and the drama that unfolded, obviously putting him off his pace. But during the race, you would have expected more from Lando Norris.
Yeah, it was a very disappointing weekend for Lando in Barcelona. But I think it's one of those races, we know that he has pace, and we know that he has, he has been on the podium once this season. So, and he is in a good form. So I hope he bounces back from this, but we know Barcelona is not the best overtaking track. So he finished more or less where he started, and yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But the McLarens have been said to have more pace than the Ferraris, and you would expect Norris to capitalize on that, especially going up against Carlos Sainz and Esteban Ocon and the likes of such. He did end up overtaking Esteban Ocon for P8 at the end of the race, because Esteban was on a one-stop strategy again. Kind of weird, because again, all these one-stop strategies that the teams tried to pull off, I feel was pretty weird, because coming into the weekend after qualifying, it was said time and again that the two-stop is the fastest strategy, and that is what most teams will probably go for. But again, very, very weird, watching other teams go for something that it was theoretically and practically slower, and something that they all agreed on across the paddock.
Yeah, definitely. Esteban Ocon started P4, P5, I believe. He ended up 9th. Alonso also started 10th, and he ended up 17th or 18th, and had to take one extra stop just to finish. So that one-stop strategy certainly did not work out for all those who tried it.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially from Alpine, definitely starting for Fernando, there was definitely a chance for points finish at the Barcelona circuit, just like in Portimao, with both the Alpines finishing 7th and 8th, Ocon and Fernando Alonso picking up some valuable points in Portimao. Great race on them. But Alpine has definitely unlocked a lot of potential with their upgrades that they brought in Imola. In Imola, it was a wet race, and we didn't see, the potential, or how much Alpine had gained through those upgrades. But they have definitely unlocked a lot of speed in that car, as we saw in Portimao and in Barcelona, and it has been consistent. And since both of the tracks are more or less, I wouldn't say more or less the same, but the layout is similar, although the Portimao track has a lot more undulations, and it was like it was a very windy race week in Portimao especially, and the Alpine car held up. So that goes to show that the people at Alpine have put in some great effort, and we can expect them to be in the mix a whole lot more in the midfield battle than in the first two races. Um, Now coming on to AlphaTauri, what happened to them? They were a little nameless throughout both the weekends. Pierre Gasly finally picking up the one last point um, in Barcelona, but not much. Yuki Tsunoda having a quiet weekend in Portimao and having trouble with his car again in Barcelona. So not much from Yuki either. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely a very strange couple of races for AlphaTauri. Strange 4 races, I should say, because they haven't lived up to the hype and the potential that they showed in preseason testing. Yuki Tsunoda is still getting to grips with that car and finding his limit, which can be tough for a rookie, especially given how much hype and how much pressure he is under.
I mean, but at least in the first couple of races, we did see the potential, at least during qualifying from Pierre Gasly, putting the car in the top 10. I think he qualified fifth in both of the first two races, but absolutely nothing in terms of pace or any of that potential throughout the last two weekends in Portimao and Barcelona. And I think it was Cranky Yankee, CY Motorsport, who tweeted out that Yuki has had an unreliable car. Definitely, the DNF in Barcelona was not Yuki's fault. It was an engine issue, a power unit issue. The engine cut out, but so yeah, I think there's something to be explored there too. Obviously, we haven't really heard much. There were some comments from Yuki regarding the fact that AlphaTauri might not be giving both of them the same equipment, but then he retracted that comment and apologized for his for what he said earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was him just being, reactive and certainly very strange.
Absolutely, and someone that we missed out talking about when we talked about Landon Norris was his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. Really disappointing qualifying in Portimao, out in Q1, fights back, finishes P9 I believe, and then has a great weekend in Barcelona. Although people have said that, Daniel Ricciardo has started to settle down in that McLaren after his weekend in Barcelona, but I think his performance hasn't really leveled up that much as people are believing. And I think that is only because of the fact that Lando Norris finished behind him. Because if you look at the race results, Daniel Ricciardo still finished about 30 seconds off the pace, 20 seconds off of Leclerc's pace. So ideally, Lando Norris would have been, leading Leclerc in at the end of the race had he not had a bad weekend. If you look at the first couple of weekends, but I don't think Daniel Ricciardo has made a huge step as people believe. So again, but definitely a great fight back from Daniel Ricciardo in that McLaren in Portimao. Where do you see Daniel Ricciardo going? Daniel Ricciardo does like Monaco, so I hope he has a great weekend there and he can show some of his potential in that car that we have been waiting to see.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, he is settling into the car more and more. It's only up and up from here. He'll just grow into the car. He'll just find that comfort because, as he said in Portimao, he's still driving with that consciousness, with that temperament that okay, I need to get this right. He still does not have that feeling and that subconscious taking over the driving. So once that transition is complete, once he is one with the car, I think that is when we'll see the true pace of Daniel Ricciardo.
But he did extend his lead in qualifying over Lando Norris to 3-1 and made it 3-1, although behind Lando Norris in the race, in the head-to-head battle. Now let's talk about Aston Martin for a second. They're still nowhere. No upgrades to them, nothing major from them. Lance Stroll is still putting in some decent performances. Sebastian Vettel did make it to Q3 in Portimao, but nothing extraordinary for them. We've seen Alpine move up in the midfield battle, but Aston Martin are still lurking at the bottom of this midfield. What can we expect from them going into the next few weekends?
Yeah, I mean, Aston Martin did bring an update to Portimao. They gave it to Lance, and they brought the same update to
Barcelona for Seb.
Barcelona for Seb, yeah. But as you said, they are nowhere near where they should be, where they hope to be. And see, they are complaining about the flow regulations holding them back. But yeah, that I mean, apart from karma, of course, it is excuses. These are excuses, I believe. And I mean, they do need to get themselves together and go for it. But as of now, they are bottom of that midfield.
I mean, they can't complain anymore, because Mercedes have definitely unlocked the pace in their car, and it's up to Aston Martin to unlock the pace in their car. So I don't think they're at a disadvantage there. But let's move on to Alfa Romeo. An uncharacteristic mistake from Kimi Räikkönen, a veteran of the sport, most races ever, and then he's just busy looking at his dials and bumps into his teammate Antonio Giovinazzi. So just a funny incident, and then a lot of words from Räikkönen in the interview after, though. More than usual.
Yeah.
But Giovinazzi is definitely picking up the pace at Alfa Romeo, though. He is putting in some solid performances, and I hope he scores some valuable points for the team throughout the rest of the season. George Russell also had a decent weekend both times. Not too bad. Latifi is still struggling in that car. Not a lot from him. Mick Schumacher did put in a good performance in Portimao. But his teammate Mazepin, what is up with Nikita Mazepin? He has more points on his license than races under his belt. Will he get a race ban even before the season is over?
See, the thing with Nikita Mazepin is, I mean, as I said, and in an earlier episode, leave apart his off-track antics, leave apart his,
I have left it all apart. I'm just talking about the license points he has accumulated on the track.
Exactly my point. I mean, he is not doing what a Formula 1 driver is supposed to do. He's not racing good enough. I mean, he's not even competing with his teammate. He's not respecting the other drivers around him. He's not respecting the regulations that bind them, and it's very disappointing to see such a driver drive in our sport in this era. I mean, we have seen all sorts of drivers drive in F1 in the 70s, 80s, 90s, in that era, but today, when there is only 20 cars on the grid, when there's only 20, the supposedly best 20 drivers in the world, and when we see someone like Nikita, it is very disheartening as a fan of the sport. And I hope he does get better. At least he should challenge his teammate. Yep. I mean, his teammate overtook a faster Williams, Nicolas Latifi, in Portimao, and Nikita is still 30 seconds behind his teammate, so that is very, very strange.
And I agree there. We can only hope that he is able to improve the racing in Formula 1 a little bit during his time in Formula 1, which I don't know if I want it to last too long. But anyway, I'm going to talk about two more people that we haven't really talked about a whole lot or touched upon in this podcast. One of them being Valtteri Bottas and the other one being Sergio Perez. We touched about Valtteri Bottas when we talked about his fight with Leclerc, but what is up with that guy? He put it on pole, he looked fast during qualifying, but what is happening to Valtteri during the race? He's just not there. We had Toto Wolff come on the radio in Portimao to encourage Valtteri to push and catch up with Lewis, overtake Max, but and even in Barcelona, his race engineer would come on the radio and tell Valtteri that, hey, if you keep up with this pace, you will catch Max at the end of the race and finish P2 or whatever. But Valtteri is just nowhere. He's just finishing P3 consistently for Mercedes, which is great. But again, we want Valtteri to take the fight to Lewis, like he said, like he's promised us over the years, and again in Netflix's Drive to Survive.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Valtteri has been struggling for the past 2 weekends. Maybe he has not, got back and coped well with what happened in Imola, but that does not seem to be the case, especially for a world-class driver like him. But I would like to say that in Spain, in Barcelona, we saw Valtteri. What he did with that team order situation, he tried to be selfish a little bit. I mean, he said that, okay, I have my own fight with Leclerc and all that stuff. But he did race Hamilton, and I don't know if it was what he was trying to do, but it was quite strange.
I just feel that was not the right place to race Hamilton, regardless of whether or not you're in the championship fight or not, because Hamilton was clearly quicker, and I just don't think it was the right time or the right place for Valtteri to show that. And I think rather than doing that, it'll be better if he just takes the fight to Lewis and then does that. Suppose he's winning a race, and then Lewis is supposed to pass him, and he's not on fresher tires or whatever, right? And it's for the title fight or whatever. And then if he does that, that's understandable, right? If he's trying to take the title fight to Lewis. But when he's clearly out of the race and when clearly, Lewis is not racing him, Lewis is racing Max, this was not a place where, as a teammate, he should have done that or said anything like that. So really uncharacteristic from Valtteri, I'd say. But I just don't know what's going on with him. We haven't heard much from him. But we can only hope that he starts to perform during the race too.
Yeah, and talking about Sergio Perez, if Sergio Perez was a Red Bull driver was driving for Red Bull for 2-3 years and was not trying to learn a new car, I very much believe he would have been the third person on those podiums and not Valtteri Bottas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Sergio Perez is getting just like a lot of stick for not performing as well. But you got to remember, Sergio Perez has just come into the team, and even though he is experienced, he has to drive a new car. And not just Sergio Perez, you look at Daniel Ricciardo, he's still struggling. He's spent 4 races in McLaren, and no one has said that the McLarens, are a really difficult car to drive like the Red Bull. And, a lot of people have come out and said about the Red Bull that's a super difficult car to drive. And Daniel Ricciardo is still taking his time. He's still slower than his 21-year-old teammate. So, I think we can just step off the gas of Sergio Perez. Although he did have a good weekend in Portimao. He finished 4th, started 4th, finished 4th. He had a good qualifying in Imola, I think. And then he did pretty decent, in my opinion, in Barcelona, just finishing behind Charles Leclerc, who, has spent some time in that Ferrari. And we know he's blisteringly quick.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Ferrari. It's going to be a tight fight between Bottas and Perez for that third place in the championship, but I feel that Perez will catch Valtteri Bottas soon enough.
I don't know if I'm gonna hope for that. I would rather like Valtteri Bottas take the fight to Lewis Hamilton along with Max Verstappen. But yeah, definitely anything from Perez will be exciting. Anything else from you, Vedant? I think I've run out of things to talk about the 2 weekends that we had over the past couple of weeks.
I mean, yeah, we have talked about everything from the past 2 weeks. Now we are off to Monaco. After not having raced in 2020, we are back. We are going back to Monaco in 2 weeks' time. And as I said, Red Bull are quick in Monaco traditionally, but it would be interesting to see how, Red Bull are under pressure right now. They certainly are under pressure, and Max Verstappen knows it. And if they do not win that race, if they do not, claw back those 7 points, the championship will, slip out of their hands slowly and slowly. So it's a very crucial weekend for them, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and I don't know if I think it's still a little too early to say that Mercedes have started to run away with the World Championship. I mean, the constructors is obviously Mercedes, in my opinion. Even before the championship started, we always knew that Mercedes, with Valtteri and Lewis in the seat, would definitely take away the constructors championship. But I don't know if it's too early to say that Lewis will take away this drivers championship already. But I don't want to make any claims in this podcast. But watch out for that. Nothing else from me. So thank you, Vedant, for joining me once again on this podcast, and I will see you in a couple weekends when we do the preview for Monaco Grand Prix. So see you later. Thank you.